DungeonOnAnds. DRADO.
No.
GLNOS. Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons. DUNGEONANDS. DRAGONS. Dungeons and Dragons.
Yay! Thank you, Texas Devin, for that sub, even though
you asked for that. You asked for that. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm your co-host today, Tom Lommel. I'm your dungeon master most weeks, Tom Lommel. This is my co-host and your executive producer. And actual, line producer, producer,
supervising producer,
consulting producer, story editor sometimes. Yeah. Internet, that's enough of that. Internet off. Yeah, right. It's fabulous. It's our fabulous Dom Zook, everyone.
Hello.
The man behind the channel.
Howdy.
The man in front of the channel today.
Yeah.
Yes, and other days as well.
True.
Hey, Dom.
Yes, Tom.
This isn't on the schedule. I have a present for you.
What?
Yeah, I have a present for you.
Is it Dusk City Outlaws?
It is not.
Already have
It's not Dusk City Outlaws. No.
What?
It is a stack of index cards.
Ah!
Every week, I come to the studio and I say, "Hey, do we have any index cards? I want to use some."
Nope. Never.
Nope.
Look at these.
Nope. So there you go. Guess what? I was willing to spend up to 50 cents on you. I'm going to spend one French fry to keep my dog happy. All right. So, welcome everybody. We're going to talk about two things today. I don't know where you want to put those. I don't care. Live your best life.
They're yours. You're the one who's going to use them.
I am the one. Remember, when you give a gift, it's really a gift for yourself, right? So we're going to talk about two things today. We're going to take a look at what's in Dusk City Outlaws. We didn't get a chance to really showcase all the components of the game last night, and I'd like you all to see what actually is in the game, because I was very impressed by what came in the box.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So we're going to take a few minutes to look at actually what's in the game, and also talk a little bit about kind of our observations about running the game. And then we ran a one-shot last night of Dusk City Outlaws. Garav was sick, Megan was out of town, so we decided to substitute our regular D&D game with a one-shot of Dusk City Outlaws. And, we both have some thoughts about how it went. I really enjoy running this game, and I think, Dom and I were talking about it before the stream, and we're both really impressed with kind of the way the design works, and we see some real potential for it that goes a little bit beyond maybe what we got to last night, right? But let's and then secondly, we're going to have open forum. So we had a lot of questions on Tuesday, and I thought I was going to be running a rather pivotal session of Iron Keep Chronicles last night, and so on Tuesday I had a couple things that I wanted to get out there. And I really had some specific ideas about the 5 questions you should ask yourself about every encounter, and I wanted to talk through that with sort of a minimum of distractions. So I told people, and hopefully they came back to chat today, I said, you know what, Thursday, what point did the VOD cut off from the show?
The VOD, from what I could tell, the VOD cut off literally like right before you guys said, okay, and that's it.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
yeah, so you didn't miss
yeah,
you missed us talking about how cool we were.
Yeah.
And me slaughtering Minzui's name.
That's true.
You did not miss that.
But the full thing should be going up. I hope today, as long as the internet holds out. I didn't start it yet because then we would not have had bandwidth.
We would not be here.
Too,
yes,
so.
we would not be before you. We'd be in a pixelated format, 16-bit format.
Right.
So yeah, I did want to talk on Tuesday about those 5 questions you should ask every encounter. That seemed like a very important piece of DMing philosophy that I wanted to get through, but that meant I had to kind of push some questions off, right?
There's a couple of questions in Discord.
In Discord.
So,
yeah, so you
but that were asked during Tuesday. But
great. You can join the Discord if you have stuff that you want to take offline on it, but we're going to do a live chat for most of today's show, right? Assuming that we don't talk too long about Dusk City Outlaws, which would be easy to do. Let's flip to the overhead camera, which is not on. No. Is it on? No. Now it's on.
It's now on.
Power turned off by economy mode. Recording mode. This is, as you can tell, it's a big box. This is like serious, like. Oh, should we do the inverted one though? Or do you want to?
Well, that's his right side up for everyone. Then.
Okay, all right, gotcha. So obviously, keep in mind that this is a little dinged up from us having played around with it last night, right? So some things are out of order. This isn't a real unboxing video. It's more of like a reboxing video. So yeah, the judge's rule book is 48 pages. That's not necessarily the first thing you see. It's just the last thing I packed. And it comes with information about running plot twists and crew, and then it has information about running a campaign and whatnot. And then it has a series of different scenarios, right? Now, the one that we ran last night, in case you were curious, I thought about running I looked through all of them, honestly, and I was looking for something that was 2 to 3 days. We ran the kidnapping job, right? Now, these are oversized pages, so there's a lot of information on each of these pages, but the whole thing is 4 pages, right? I would say this is approximately, if you were to put this into maybe a more compact format, it's maybe 6 pages, right? But it's not a ton of information. And despite that, there's a whole storyline that we did not pursue last night, right? So this whole thing with Captain Rufus Tweed and going into the Bloods building, into the safe house where he lives, and it turns out that Juniper has a, well, let's put it out here. And it turns out that Juniper has a mistress and whatnot. All of that stuff was ignored because we just played the end of it. That was the carriage races, that piece of it. So you can tell that, like, not only can you get a lot of adventure out of this thing, but there's a lot of replayability if you wanted to replay it and kind of reskin it a little bit. There's still stuff that we could change. So that's that. Similarly, the players rulebook rules comes in at a little bit lighter page count. Although keep in mind these rulebooks are enormous, right? They're not the standard 7x10 or whatever. Hey, guess what? Yeah, lay down. You gotta lay down. I have a deer who craves French fries. Oh, that's a small one. That's not very nice. So the player rulebook explains what components are in the game, how days, nights, planning, legwork, what you saw last night on the stream, how that sort of works. When a scene goes into a drama scene, which is when, like we had in the final showdown last night, it was a drama scene where we kind of get into the turn-by-turn combat and things are happening in very short amounts of time. That turns into a drama scene, right? And it explains how the heat pool works and that sort of thing. And then it also has information on campaign play, and that was unlockable during the Kickstarter. So that's I read the whole player's handbook, other than the campaign stuff, last night in about, I don't know, 25 minutes or whatever. And it's a quick rules reference, which is also on the character sheets. So those are your 2 main rule books, right? A nice heavy cardstock bunch of tokens, which we did not use. So the 5s are heat tokens, these are single heat tokens, and then these are your influence tokens. We could punch these out, but this is where it starts to get impressive, right? So here's your GM screen. First of all, it's got a nice satin finish. You can't tell you can't tell through the internet, but it has a nice kind of matte finish inside. Now, I do like in this, there's a list of names that you can throw out there, and it's divided up by types: commoners, elderlanders, etc., etc., etc. That's pretty interesting. So if you need to come up with NPCs, it's got like this NPC kind of panel over here. Likewise, if you need to talk about a portion of the city, you come upon a debtor's prison that has a dog barking incessantly nearby. I like that too, right? So it gives you some tools to improvise with. Here's some obstacles that you could come up with. Here's some environmental obstacles. It's a 4-panel screen, which I guess, and I like the fact that it's landscape, right? So it gives you quick stats for enemies if you want to come up with. Your minions have a chance of doing what, your antagonists have a chance, minor villain, major villain, etc. Our sorceress last night was a major villain. Our noble wasn't a minor villain, he's more of an antagonist, right? He's not supposed to be hard to defeat. Who's conspicuous in what district? That's important in this game. When you generate heat, things that generate heat, boons that could be applied, how to apply boons, how to apply drawbacks. We saw that last night. Generally, I just generated heat with those that I then spent at the end. So, and then it has your heat chart here in terms of spend 4 heat to introduce a minor complication, introduce a major complication for 12, or drop a plot twist. We didn't quite get to 20 heat last night. And some of that, I think, is because they had so many rerolls and they were pushing their luck a lot that they were able to really avoid generating a lot of heat. Also, they weren't doing a lot of stupid stuff in the open, right? And that's drawing attention. Like I said last night, this is a game where attention is your enemy. When you get caught doing stuff in public, you want to keep everything on the down low. So now we get to see really the thought and care that went into the component tray for this box.
A lot of this reminds me of the Mouse Guard RPG box.
I have not seen that.
It's similar in that it's got a lot of this stuff, but also it gives you a lot of these sort of notepads, basically that contain the information that you need.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that it's a quick disposable character sheet here, right? And on the back of this one is a quick rules reference, right? Attacks and check, pushing your luck, advantage dice, challenge dice, spending influence, how your luck works. The whole game is basically on this sheet of paper here, right? In terms of the mechanics.
Basically all the players need is right there.
Like you can literally just flip that over. And then this is more for your campaign play, right? It's a notepad. What's on the back of that? Yeah.
This just tells you kind of who your the crew is and everything, and you can, again, like for campaign play, you can build this out. You have all the members here, and whether they're a core member or they're retired, the XP that you have, the factions that you have built up XP with, and then on the back, recurring characters that you might have had with all of their appearances and such listed in there. So that's super helpful.
Yeah, so that's a pretty. I especially love how simple the character sheets are, and it's just like tear one off, and that way I don't have to worry about like making a copy of something and So it was originally designed by Rodney Thompson as to be a simple, straightforward, like I want to introduce somebody to RPGs. Yeah. How can I streamline the system to be interesting and approachable and playable in one night? And I think I think that the only tricky part about playing it last night on the stream was we didn't spend a ton of time explaining kind of the rules and the setting, right? And I think it would help the players to have some sort of like setting reference that would give them a little bit more about, what the structure of New Dunshaven is, because the districts are sort of important. They're not necessarily so unique that you need to drill into a bunch of detail, because the game clearly like gives you carte blanche to like just make up parts of the city, right? It also gives the players carte blanche to make up parts of the city, people in the city, things that are happening, twists and turns that they can take advantage of. And I think that threw people at the table for a loop in that first planning scene where they're like, what do you mean I know somebody? I'm like, you know somebody, you're a crook, you're connected, you know somebody. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I know, I'm gonna go see Spitz, he's a bookie. Like, great, okay, perfect. Yeah. So for me as the DM, it's a lot lower prep that way. I just have to read those 4 pages and have an idea of what clues need to get dropped. Then I have to improvise in between what's going on. But my job is to really take what the players are doing and create complications on top of it, if necessary. Now, I will say, before we get too much further into the components, that I found myself not throwing complications at them because the things that they were talking about were pretty reasonable. And I realized that complications are just going to get in the way. Yeah. Right? So it's like he wants to go talk to Spitz the bookie and he wants to go get a bunch of information about the carriage races. Yeah, he goes and does that. And we have a fun role-playing scene that's enjoyable, and he gets a bunch of information that makes him go, oh, well, now I should follow up on this. And there's no fight, there's no combat, like you don't have to make an investigation roll to figure it out. You don't have to, you know, I mean, there are opportunities for that to happen within the game, but it's not a function of, well, if you don't roll right, then the plot comes to an end, right? It's like, no, if you can come up with a very legitimate and justifiable reason why your guy would go to this place and know this thing and know this person and get this information, then why not make it happen? So it was very interesting to me. Like, my job as the DM is much more about reflecting back at the players than it is something about creating obstacles for them to kind of jump through hoops in order to get to things, right?
Yeah, it's Scratchpad Publishing. If you go to Scratchpad Publishing, I think all one word.com, I'm pretty sure you will get there.
It was also a Kickstarter.
It was also a Kickstarter, Dusk City Outlaws.
Dusk City Outlaws.
But yeah, if someone wants to search for that. So we've played this twice on camera and once off camera. Tom played in a game that Rodney ran. And
I think he published it someplace though. Didn't he put the video up on the Kickstarter?
It's on the Kickstarter. Yeah. It's on Scratchpad Publishing's YouTube channel, actually.
Yeah. Lay down.
Thanks, BSB Care. And I remember in the game that had Amy and Jordan and Talene and Garav in there that they were doing things they were not supposed to be doing. and they tripped off, I think, the guards in like the second leg of Discovery or whatever, and then things just went to hell from there.
Yeah.
So it's certainly it certainly has that opportunity. And yes, Class Stunts, I was actually going to mention, it is very much like Powered by the Apocalypse systems, because there is like Tom was saying, there is somewhat of a mechanic of a spout lore or whatever, where the players are able to kind of dictate how things are somewhat going to play out.
I would argue it's even stronger than like the Powered by the Apocalypse system, right? So Powered by the Apocalypse, you can sort of decide a few things, but you're still following a plot that the GM has laid forth for you, and you may have to, you know, and you have to kind of like jump through the hoops that they've set up in order to resolve those story points, right? Whereas in this, it's much more of, I have a bunch of information back here. You just tell me what you do to mine it out. And if you come up with a great strategy, that's successful. We move on. We get that information out. And we move on to the next thing. And if you do something that's risky or dangerous, you may still be successful. But then we get some, you know, we could have the possibility of generating some heat and introducing some complications to the plot, etc. Right? So it is if your players are traditional D&D players, it's going to kind of like it's going to throw them for a loop when they go, I could just decide that I'm really well connected with this famous opera singer who's like this mega star in the city and she owes me a favor. Yeah, you can just decide that. Yeah, spend some influence to make that happen. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't have to have a negotiation about it or what's that doesn't. The only thing that you can do is like as the GM, you're allowed to go, well, I'm going to veto that. That's a little outside the scope of the of the system or whatever. Like you have veto power as the GM, but a lot of times it's about saying yes to what they come up with. And you could see the table kind of like light up, like, oh, okay. Well, now I know this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the GM responsibilities are shared amongst the table, rather than me sitting here kind of like doling out little tidbits of information and them chasing after them, making skill checks or whatever. It's really they decide how they want to pursue the investigation, and my job to figure out how much information gets revealed by that. Right? You will see. Let's while we're on this topic, and then we'll get through this again. If we look at here's our job, right? So Evelyn Nora, right, was someone who came up. What's a little bit better thing, right? The carriage races, right? Here's stuff that they just know out of the gate. here's two short paragraphs of stuff that if they know about horses or the right kind of people, they would know this stuff. Basically, like we had last night in the game, where you go ask a couple people about it, or you happen to know somebody and they reveal this, right? And then there's a section that here's some stuff that can be revealed by doing legwork. Now I can decide maybe they only learn 2 things, maybe they learn all 4 or 5 things, and then finally there's this level of here's a deep secret that they might unlock if they really go the extra mile or come up with a clever plan or whatever, right? So you kind of have this smorgasbord of information that you can dispense. It doesn't cover everything, like who's running the carriage races. Well, that's not in here. I had to make that up last night. So who cares? That was easy. So you have this array of information that kind of keeps you. That as the GM you can play with, like here's what gets revealed and whatnot. So let's just finish going through the box here, and so here is the Traveler's Guide to New Dunhaven. This is an actual book, and it is 240 pages long, and it's fairly in depth in terms of covering all of the major pieces of New Dunhaven, right? I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and read through the whole thing, and I wish I had a little bit more time yesterday to digest this so that I would be more familiar with the city. I do feel like there's one element that I'd like at the table, and I don't know if it's not included intentionally or if it just didn't come up during the development. But I do wish there was like a map of the city, right?
Yeah.
That I could put on the table and go, okay, well this is this district, that's the nobles district, here's where the prison is, da 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 da. Like I didn't see it in the materials when I was going through it yesterday prepping for the game, and I think it would be nice to have just a little map. But you know what? A map of a city is not hard to come up with, right? So here's where the component tray really starts to kind of shine, right? Let me pull these out. So you can tell that Rodney Thompson did some serious board game design because this component tray, I didn't realize this was embossed inside.
Yeah, I just now seen that too.
So if you look at these, inside there are several sets of your specialty sheets, right? Or the various classes, if that's what. What's inside? Oh, Rodney says there's a map in the Traveler's Guide. Maybe you can find that while I'm showing off.
Thank you, Rodney.
I wish I had a poster map version that I could just like lay down on the table. Sometimes those sorts of reference materials, it's not like there's a ton of information that needs to be on there, but it provides. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah. This sort of thing provides a focus for the players. It gives them something to look at and think about, and it helps just bring them. Two things. It creates like a specific point of reference for them in the world of the fiction, but it also creates a concrete thing that they can go to when they're sitting at the table, kind of in the middle of a planning scene, and going, I don't what. Well, wait, what should it's a prompt for ideas, right? That being said, like you can also kind of like Dom Zook is in special things.
I didn't.
As well, you should.
I did not know that. Oh, that's cool. All right.
As well as sometimes that stuff though can also like start to destroy the fiction of like, well, how would I ever get over there? And one of the things, we were talking about this before the stream too, that I like about the fact that everything's divided into these day and night cycles is the time cycles are so abstract that you can plausibly say, yeah, you could be down at the docks interviewing the Teonan captain who's going to take these guys away, who, by the way, I just completely made up. And you could also be visiting, Spitz the bookie over across town within this entire cycle of like a day, whatever that means. So these are your specialties. Again, you have a nice reference on the back of what the flow of the game is like. And here's what I really like about this legwork piece of it, right? Is it gives you it zeroes in what the player's efforts are, right? Because one of the dangers, and Rodney is very aware of this, right, is that you're just going to sit around and kind of aimlessly talk and talk and talk about what could be done and not actually do anything, right? And the book is very explicit about get the players to go find out things, because it's the things that they don't know that are going to kill them, you know, and get them in trouble. And they may think they know everything about the job, and it turns out they don't. You know, to pull a Rumsfeld, it's the things that there's the things you know, the things that you don't know, and the things you don't know, and that this game really tackles that last issue of like the stuff that you don't know is the stuff you got to find out what you don't know.
It's very if you're playing with people who are used to like a D&D style game or something like that, where they're just like, we can just keep throwing dice at it until it happens.
Yeah, until I roll a natural 20, and then you have to tell me the secret.
Right. Here it's, you know, it's very specific about stuff. It's like if they don't get that information, they don't get that information, and it doesn't happen, and that can really bite them in the ass. You know.
But it's also within your purview to give them more information than you know, like if they go to talk to their bookie, there's no definitive thing that says, well, they learned 2 facts off of this list. It's not like that. And that's another way that's different than Apocalypse World, right? Like Apocalypse World engine will say, okay, well, if you roll a 7 to 9, then you get to pick 2 things off of this list that you can ask about, and that's it, right? This is not that specific, which I think is an advantage for this style game. Don't get me wrong. I love Powered by the Apocalypse systems, no question. So you got a huge stack of your specialties, and in fact, there's doubles in here, and there's rare characters. I only pulled a small section for our game last night because I didn't want to overwhelm the players.
I have no fries to give.
No. You're a cruel man. So some of these are rare characters that have a little bit more extra ability than what we saw last night in the game, and that's fine. And then also you have an enormous. You have a great. It's a nice high quality.
Yeah. Great cardstock.
And it has that kind of satin matte finish to it of your cartels and circles and whatnot, right? And on the back, there's sample characters and prompts for what names you might call that character and stuff like. And so in this respect, this is another way that I think this is really friendly for a one-shot or an intro game, in that what I love about this is you take your one sheet and you take your other sheet and you put them together, and this is your whole character, right? It's all right there in front of you. And if you're stuck for, I don't know what this guy is like, you flip it over and you go, oh, he's more of an enforcer, and here are some names that I could call this person or whatever. And likewise, if I don't understand how the game is structured, I flip this over, done, right? So, yeah, why don't you just give him a fry? He's trying to love you so hard, but he can't bring himself to do it without a French fry.
Hi, next gen gal.
So there's a nice stack of character options here. If anything, I think for your intro one shots, go through and pull them out and narrow it down, or tailor it for the specific job that you're going to want to run. Right? Like I definitely, when I was looking at, okay, well, I'm going to run this kidnapping job, I narrowed down the options for who I wanted to send along on that. What specialties and whatnot were going to be involved in that. You were going to say something.
Oh, I like that the character sheets also give you a variety in terms of, like the family. It's you get a male and a female version of pretty much every character, I think. So, it's all really cool.
There's a nice array of representation in the art. I think that's really well done too. So this tray insert. Well, let's flip this open too. This is so beautiful. So here are your challenge dice.
I have to start splitting. I have to break things out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to start breaking things out. I used this last night. This is a deck of opponents, right? Antagonists, villains that you can use. Pirate Captain. I got his luck. I've got his skills. I've got a nice character portrait on the back. it's a very simple, streamlined system to run, right? And I have to say too that even though it was getting late and I was trying to push really hard to kind of get things wrapped up because we were so far over time, I didn't have to bend the system at all in order to bring the game to a climax. Like, the main villain had 200 luck points. They one-shotted, or two-shotted her, right? Or, you know, in dramatic fashion, as they were intended to. And they took care of the minor noble with the weird rat distraction thing, right? So I love cards. I love this little extra bonus. I don't have to go drag out a book of whatever, of monster stats and if I want to just make it up on the spot, I can make it up on the spot. It's not such a granular, gritty system that there's so much detail. This is a deck of quirks that we did not use last night because that was a little more involved than we wanted to get into. And then Dom, Dom, you're kind of you're downplaying our main.
Yeah, no, these are so cool. So
yeah, so these are from campaign coins.
Yeah.
These are the heat coins that we used last night. This is an extra bonus. This does not come in the base game. You have to pay extra for these. But I think it was like $10 or something like that.
It was
I don't know what they
reasonable.
That was in the Kickstarter. I don't know what they retail for now. This is 5 heat, and then we have 5 singles. And then these are your influence tokens, right? And you know, we're big fans of campaign coins here. They did a gorgeous job. These really turned out terrific. I was when I got my package.
Oh yeah, I mean these. There's a great heft to them, and they're beautiful. The color and stuff in there is super cool, and you can use them in a Star Trek game too if you want.
Yeah. I also appreciated that having these day and night cards available to kind of tick down to the countdown to your final scene, right? So there's very well thought out components here. They're very solidly produced. I've kickstarted board games that had worse production than this, right? And this is a great RPG. So I was really happy with. It's a very heavy box when it gets here. You have a nice variety of dice for your players, etc. I don't think there's anything else. So we have plenty of room to put all our other components in and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I was, you know, the topper is these.
The trays.
The pressed trays. Well, that's now we're off camera.
Yeah. But
there's a player's tray and a judge's tray. I don't know if that's visible.
There we go.
Yes. Oh, look. We did. Yeah.
So yeah, it's all.
So you don't need to go, you know, buy a third-party add-on to like keep all of your stuff, all of your game bits sorted. Yeah. Rodney says those trays were also built to be able to be pulled out and set on the table during play to hold your components. Yeah. Yeah.
Done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy that I backed this. This when I saw this played the first time, I was very smitten with it. I think it's got a lot of potential for newbies who are just getting into RPGs and aren't sure how to play that system, and they go over here.
Oh, influence goes over here. Yeah. Of course it is. It's a player resource. Look at that.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah, it's a well designed, well thought out game. So
yeah, definitely something that we'll be revisiting again here on the stream. So that's the buzz. That's all right. So lay down. Hey. Oh, lay down. Yeah, so I really enjoyed playing it last night, and it really, you know, like I said, I think my main takeaway of it is that it is a game about competence. We talked about this before the stream, so I shouldn't just talk about it out of the blue like we talked about it before. But one of the things that I think is interesting about this game is that unlike if you were going to start, you know, if you're going to introduce somebody to tabletop RPGs and you introduce them to D&D, you typically start them off as like a first level character. And they're not great at most stuff, right? They have a hard time even hitting a monster with their weapon. this is a game about competence. You are, whatever your specialty is, you're really good at that thing. You have a very, very good chance of accomplishing that particular thing. You may not be as good at anything else, or you're only kind of good at some other things, but even kind of good is 65%, right? And then everything else is 50%. So it's a game about being competent, about being a competent hero. It's not about like, if your bumbling failures are really like flukes rather than a bumbling character that you're always struggling to attain more power until you really come into your own competence. You know, it's kind of like D&D that way, where like the first level it's fun to play that struggle, but there's a point at which you're like, can we just be 5th level so maybe I could cast more than one healing spell? Yeah.
Right.
So I thought that was an interesting revelation for me, is that it's a game about characters who are already good at what they do. And there is information about a campaign. You could gain more abilities and whatnot. As Rodney points out, it's more story reward based than it is numbers based, right? I would be curious to see how this plays out as a campaign, but I'd be very, very happy to play this again as either one-shots or whatever. So I think those were my big takeaways. It is a paradigm change in terms of the level of how the responsibility for the fiction is shared on both sides, between the DM and the players, and also that it's a game of going after information and really getting it, rather than kind of attempting die rolls and hoping that you roll high enough to get information.
Right.
So, all right, we spent a good half an hour talking about Death City Outlaws, but I think it's worth it because and this is not just because Rodney's in the room. I was really impressed when I opened this box, and when you get the box in your mailbox, it's so heavy. That was the first thing.
The guy handed it to me, and I was all like, "Oh, whoa, what the hell is this?"
And so the thoughtful design and the production effort that went into it have really paid off and impressed me. So. I think it's worth checking out if you're at all curious about kind of this style of kind of one-shot fantasy heist, right?
Yeah.
We're fans here. You'll see it again on Saving Throw. How about that? Bam! My real thoughts. I don't have any. I think I brought up my major.
Yeah.
The only other thing I would say, if I have one other concern, is that we did ding up the judges' rulebooks a little bit already. So I think they're going to get a little dog-eared and worn.
It's okay. It was on my copy, though.
But yeah, it was Dom's copy, so I don't care. Also, like, Rodney does a good job with PDF support. So, like, I think if I brought my iPad last night, and I think if I had been smart about it, I would have had the adventure open on my iPad, so I could just scroll around with that, and I didn't have to flip back and forth. Again, you're only flipping 4 pages, right?
Yeah.
But those are, the player's map and the judge's rulebook getting a little dog-eared. Those are very minor compared to the level of production that goes into everything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I lifted, first of all, when I saw the DM screen, I was like, oh, holy crap.
Yeah.
And then when I lifted that off and there were the vacuum form trays, I was like, wow.
Yeah. Really a lot of thought was put into this. And
did we do an RPGS for this?
We did.
Yeah.
Yep. I think while it was still in Kickstarter, we did an RPGS. That was Jordan Caves Callerman, Tilling Guerra, Garav, Gulati, and Amy Vorpal, with Tom leading the charge.
Why don't I remember that session?
I don't know. Jordan wore a horrible white or yellow-black suit jacket because he was a mummer, I believe, and he was told to dress brightly, so he did.
Maybe because it was like 14 months ago.
Maybe, yeah, it was January.
There's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of role playing under the bridge between now and then.
The one thing my only complaint, and this really only pertains to people who are streaming this, is that it does take a while to run. Not longer than maybe a typical home game RPG session, honestly, and it really depends on your players having a sort of knowledge of what's going into it. If they're coming into it cold, it may take a little bit of time.
I felt like we had a hiccup last night. That first planning leg, where everybody was kind of getting their mind around. And I don't think Minzui had done a ton of RPGs, so that was another big curveball.
Yeah. It's not a game fault. It's just. That's just sort of the design.
I think like anything though, like the first session always plays a little muddy, right? And I think the second session of this would play a lot cleaner. The other thing that I would do to address that is if I were to introduce this to a table for the first time again, if that makes sense. If I had a table of new players who hadn't played this, I made a dedicated effort last night to make sure that each individual person had their own dedicated legwork scene. What are you doing? And I really tried to drive home, like, what's your goal? What are you trying to find out? And how are you going to get this information? And I think I became a little obstinate or kind of imposing on that point. And I think what I would do is I would slacken up the time pressure a little bit, maybe throw in an extra day and night cycle, and then encourage them, at least in the opening scene, to team up. Okay, so the two of you want to go find out what's going on with these carriage races, right? Okay, why don't you guys go, who are you going to go talk to? And then they can kind of jointly brainstorm together, rather than putting each individual player on the spot, like, tell me who you know, and tell me what you know, what's the special, cool, gimmicky twist that's going to get you this information. Which is something that they should indulge in and enjoy, but I was really putting players on the spot with that last night, and I don't think that greased the skids. So I think in the opening session, I would give them a little more time to get their feet wet, and also allow them to team up for the first couple cycles of like, oh, okay, so the two of us go, and that way, if Dom goes, oh, wait a minute, didn't he just say something about there's some sort of sorceress? I want to ask him. I want to ask about that. Then they're both there in that scene already, rather than having to spend luck to join it, or you just happen to be conveniently coming by or whatever, right? So I think that would help kind of like ease everybody into this different paradigm of how we're going to explore the plot in our RPG here, right? So that's just something to think about in terms of like getting it going faster, because in hindsight, I felt like I was, whenever you're putting people on the spot like that to improvise, when they start to choke up, they start to choke up hard, I know. And there was a big issue, which is completely understandable, of Havana going, well, but my idea is his idea. And I'm like, well, you got to have something different. Well, if it was a team up, why don't you guys go together?
Sure. Yep.
So,
yep.
That's a very simple fix that I think would help kind of grease the skids on that whole deal. All right.
Okay, 45 minutes.
45 minutes on Dust City Outlaws. Well, we really like the game, and it's a really premium, delivery. It's Rodney's first Kickstarter that he's done by himself, and I know he had to pull some favors with people that he knew to make it happen, and it was a huge payoff for me and delightfully unexpected.
Yeah,
so
definitely pick it up if you have any passing interest in these types of games, because I think it's a nice mix of a lot of the things that I like of a lot of different games.
Right.
So
I would say most of my prep time last night was spent trying to digest the whole scope of the rules. Right. I was trying to get through both rule books, and I just sat down for an hour and kind of barnstormed through them. That was most of my prep time, and then I spent maybe 15 minutes flipping through and picking a job. And once I picked a job, it really, you have two plot threads that you have to digest, and there's a whole list of clues that are laid out for you. And once you read those 4 pages and kind of get the basics, there's not much to it.
Right.
You have enough information that you can improvise and fill in the gaps.
Cool.
And I felt confident doing it. That's where that captain came from. Like, well, I'm just going to make up a guy down at the docks that they're going to deliver this thing to. And they put the guy in the chest and they seal it up and take him away. All right. So we did say Today is open forum, so if you have questions about your game, whatever that is, whether you're new to Dungeons & Dragons, you're new to RPGs, but if, with the GM's focus, if you find yourself on the DM's side of the screen and you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable and you're feeling a little bit kind of under the gun, and you feel responsible for keeping everybody happy and engaged, and you're not sure what to do about X situation that comes up, or Y player who seems to kind of continually undercut your authority, or whatever it is. Whatever is going on in your game, I'm happy to, well, Dom and I are both happy to give our own insights and opinions on how we can improve your experience, or what our experience has been with whatever issue you've got. So,
So a couple of questions came in on Tuesday, and you guys were nice enough to port them over to the Discord so that we could remember. Class Done, since I know you're here.
Blind Seer, thanks for the donation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Blind
Thanks for
Seer.
donating last night as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Class Done said, question. Recently was persuaded to run a beginner's campaign for our local RPG group. The first game is this weekend, and all the players have zero experience in tabletop role-playing games. I've never done this before. Would you suggest that I focus more on the mechanics for the first session and then slowly ease them into more of the role-playing aspects of the game, or the opposite? We are doing character creation on the first day. Full table of 7 players. I'm hoping to have time to actually start playing, but I'm at a loss for how to begin.
Hey, Blind Seer, I wish we would have gotten to the gunpowder, because that would have really would have changed.
It literally exploded the situation, I think. Anyway.
So, you're running an intro game for new players. It's the very first time. You know, do you want to focus on mechanics or role playing? And you're doing a character creation session for the first session. I'm going to give you my quick. We'll see if it's quick. I'm going to give you my advice on running a first session of D&D, right?
You got 3 minutes.
I'm feeling a little under the gun now. Yeah, as Modern Child points out, 7 players is too much.
A lot.
Okay, that's a lot. I'm not saying that you can't handle it, but it's a common question that comes up. Hey, how do I introduce my table to D&D? They've never played any role-playing games. Now, one question you have to ask is, have they watched any streaming D&D, right? Or have they listened to any podcast? What are their expectations? Do they have any familiarity with how the system works, right? But in general, what I would say is, first of all, don't do character generation. Just make pre-gens, take the names off, scrub the names off. Don't even play the full D&D rule set. Okay, you're gonna be tempted to, because you know the game, and or at least you're like, well, this is the game. I got to play the game the way it's written. Mm-hmm. That is garbage. You do not need to do that. Do you know what they do in the Adventure Zone? They roll a d20, and if they roll high, something good happens, and if they roll low, something bad happens. And there happen to be spells and stats somewhere in there, but they play really loosey-goosey with the rules, right? And there's a reason for that. It's because they don't want to get bogged down in the minutia of how does this work, Mm-hmm. And there's a wonderful opportunity to indulge in that play style down the road, once you get them hooked, right? But if your first session of D&D is 8 people sitting around staring at each other while one person hogs the rule book because they're looking up what equipment comes in their background package, like, it's a recipe for disaster. You're going to lose people's interest. So I would say it's not necessarily a question of, do I focus on mechanics or role playing? I would say it's a question of, how much do you streamline the mechanics so that people can do the cool things that you do in D&D and also have some role playing, right? But I think role-playing becomes intimidating for first-time players. They're like, I don't know, do I have to talk in a weird voice? No, you don't have to talk in a weird voice. Yep. Just decide what your character looks like and how they might interact with this person. That's all. It doesn't need to be very complicated role-playing, right? We give them some opportunities to role-play, but also they want to do the cool stuff that you do in D&D. They want to roll a 20-sider and hit somebody with their sword. They want to cast a spell that puts somebody to sleep. They want to fire a magic missile. They want to find a trap and diffuse it, right? They want to find a secret door and discover something behind it. They want to have a face down with the boss monster and the group defeats him, right? They want to go to a magic fountain and take a chance and either put a coin in and make a wish or take a drink out of it and have something cool happen to them, right? Those are the iconic experiences of Dungeons and Dragons. And so the mechanics can be stripped down to their bare essentials. What I always do is I get rid of ability scores, 18, 16, 17, 3, 7, 9. None of that garbage matters, right? What matters is I have a +2 strength. What matters is that my athletics score is +5, right? So I strip all that stuff down to the bonuses, the numbers that matter. It's a D20 plus what? Oh, it says right here, +2. Great. D20 +2. I got a 17. Terrific. So strip the numbers down, give them 1 attack, maybe 2, but I would say, you might say, okay, you can either hit with your longsword at +3 for a D8 +3, or you can throw a dagger at +2 for a D4 +0, right? But give them 1 attack. Do the skill list alphabetically. I hate it when the skill list is divided up by the ability type, because when it's something like, because newbies never know what correlates to what. And if I say, oh, okay, give me an athletics check, they go, well, I'm like a rogue, like gymnast character, right? So then they start looking under dexterity. And you're like, no, it's under strength. They don't need to understand that piece of the math. Just give them the skill list in alphabetical order. And so when you say, I need a stealth check, they go, what is that? And it's under skills. And they go, skills, no. Oh, stealth, boom, +4, great, roll, done, right? So strip everything down to the bare numbers that it needs to be, right? Don't worry about things that are manageable resources. Get rid of those things. Like, okay, you can cast any of these 5 spells 3 times. No, do not do that to a new player. Go, here's 3 spells. You can cast these 3 spells whenever you want, right? Or you can cast each of them twice. Like, make it that simple. You can cast each of them once. Well, then check it off. So simplify the mechanics down. You might ask yourself, am I still playing D&D? Who cares? D&D, for all intents and purposes of this discussion, is I roll a D20, and if I roll high, something cool happens. And if I roll low, I miss or something bad happens.
Also, when I started playing D&D, I started playing with basic rules D&D, and then eventually moved up to AD&D. You know how much changed between basic and advanced? It's that's fine. Like, it's not a big deal for someone to be like, well, I played D&D, but we didn't do it like the way your guys are doing it. It's like, well, it's fine. Everyone's going to play it a different way.
That's going to happen. And there's such a huge learning curve, and there's so much ahead of you in your career as a role player that if you can't teach it all in the front end. You can't give them that rules mastery at the front end. That's not the way the system works. And that's one of D&D's greatest assets. It's one of the reasons I've been a lifelong player, is because once you acquire that rules mastery, then you've got a deep investment in it, right? It's also one of D&D's greatest struggles or greatest challenges, is when you want to teach it to people, there's a lot you could teach them, and you could lose them first, right? As Mr. Brian Patterson, our friend in the chat, D20 Monkey, says, it needs to be fun first. So make sure that it's fun. Focus on those iconic experiences of D&D. The last thing that I will say on this for now,
you're way over,
because I know myself. I'm way over. Well, I'm doing pretty good on 8 minutes though. This is pretty solid at 8 minutes. The only other thing that I'll say about this is that you got your character sheet. It's stripped down to your 6 stats, your 2 attacks, your saving throws, your skill list, and then a couple abilities and some equipment, right? Okay, you got that. Put a thing at the bottom of the character sheet that says, one cool thing my character can do is blank. Now, we're breaking the game right here. Stick with me. Encourage each one of your players at the table to write down one cool thing that their character can do for either one time or no more than like 30 seconds, right? So it might be my character can turn invisible. Okay, great. You can turn invisible for 30 seconds and then that's it. It's done for the whole game, right? So it's an in-game, one-use ability. But if you give them that opportunity to come up with something completely on their own, okay, at one time I can do kind of like this super powerful like fire strike with my sword. Okay, cool. And it does, and then you can kind of give them the parameters around what the actual effect is. Okay, when you hit with your sword, it does an extra 6d6 damage. What? Really? Yeah, oh, that's cool. As long as you keep everything within sort of like a reasonable power band balanced amongst the table, what happens here is that your character is sitting there, your player is sitting there going, when can I use this thing? What can I want to trip this thing off. They're looking for that opportunity. It keeps them engaged in the world that you've created, the scenario that's going on, and it keeps them connected to their character, right? So that is my ace in the hole advice for getting the character. It takes it out of like, oh, well, I just put a name on this guy and I guess I like playing a fighter, but whatever, to making it their character. Now it's their character. Oh, no, he's not just a fighter. He's a guy who can turn himself into solid stone for 30 seconds. That sounds cool to me. Who cares if it's not something a first level character could do? Doesn't matter.
Great. Okay. You're going to be fine, class stunts. Don't worry about it. It's going to be great.
Again, if you focus on those those iconic D&D experiences, they're going to be hooked. It's what hooks everybody into D&D. Wait a minute, you mean I twist the rock and then a section of the wall comes back? Oh.
Give them pre-gens. Give them pre-gens and get into the gameplay as quickly as possible, because the character generation, for some people, for me, I love character generation. That's awesome. But for a new player, like, it's too much.
It's analysis paralysis.
Yeah, you're gonna break them, and then once you get into the gameplay, they're gonna be like, oh, well, I built it this way. It needs to have no. Just give them a pre-gen, and then just say, okay, let's get into it. You know, let's just play. Feel free to switch out the characters if you're like, he gets to cast all the spells. I don't like casting spells. I want to hit things with the sword. Okay, great. You know, who cares?
Yeah, a situation like that, you can also just introduce like, oh, okay, well, you find a scroll.
Yeah.
Or you find a ring that lets you cast a ray of fire that does the same amount of damage as an arrow.
Yeah.
Who cares?
All right, Blind Seer, I'm going to get to you in a second. First, DJ Phoenix had a question. I have a question about the plot radar you mentioned on the show. How do you adjust the radar for player derailments when they go off on a tangent you did not initially expect them to take?
Well, so the great thing about that is I just introduced that as a new element on my plot radar, right? So I'm not sure exactly. I'll have to go back into the Discord and ask some more clarifying questions, because if it's after the session and we've taken some sort of like real detour that I didn't expect, well, then I just update my plot radar by dropping new elements on there. Even though, keep in mind that plot radar is a way to organize the story elements that are in your campaign, right? But it is not a rigorous prescriptive system that says, well, everything starts in the distant column and then marches its way forward toward encountering an encounter with the players, right? If the players if I introduce something just off the top of my head that they're like, oh yeah, we know what, we're gonna go chase that guy down, I can just put that that NPC in the immediate column. You can just pop up, bam. Okay, well, it's a way to prioritize how I want to prep the next session. So if I had not thought that they were going to encounter this guy because I just made him up in the last session at the drop of the hat, and they're like, oh yeah, you know what? We're gonna commission an airship and we're gonna go talk to that sage. Okay, well, now I know I put that sage in the immediate column. Maybe I put the airship in the immediate column, and I go, I gotta prep this stuff around this sage and this airship, and everything else that I had can also not only does everything kind of move forward, it can either move into the dormant column and kind of just sit out there and not do anything, or I can push it back out, right? These are not rigorously defined columns of something that players are going to immediately encounter, something that's approaching that they're going to encounter, and something that's off in the distance that they're going to encounter. I can move stuff back and forth between any of these columns. I can take stuff off the board. I can retire stuff if I want to. So that's how I deal with it. If something comes up in the session that I didn't expect, well, Plot Radar doesn't do anything for me anyhow, right? Mm-hmm. It's not designed to do that. That's a different skill set. But in terms of new elements that I did not anticipate, those will come up, and I have no problem just going, oh, well, that's in the immediate bucket. That's going to be in the, that's something that's dangling that we need to address, whatever. So it's dynamic. You don't start off with your full set of story elements because you'll never be able to kind of see the forest for the trees. So, or actually, you won't be able to see the trees for the forest.
Blind Seer asks, how do you draw out good role-playing from less experienced players?
From less experienced players. Well, I think the easiest way to do that. So a lot of this stuff, in terms of drawing RP out of people, right, or getting players to engage in different levels of role playing. Let's put it that way, because the question itself has an implicit assumption underneath it, right, which is that good role playing is important, and that all players should indulge in good role playing. And I don't like to do the high school debate 101, but I will say that good role-playing isn't always important, and not all players need to indulge in good role-playing. There are people at the table who don't enjoy that. Like, they don't... And the fundamental issue that really this whole topic revolves around is how much do people enjoy performing at the table, Even if it's amongst a group of trusted friends that they've known for a long time, there are people who are introverted or just don't enjoy putting on a show for everyone else, and don't want to do involved heavy role playing. Now, if you want to give them some opportunities to do this, there's a couple different ways. Off the top of my head, I would say number one, it needs to be in a very safe, low stakes kind of context, right? Mm-hmm. So it can't be something like the king commands you to perform for him, or else your friends will be beheaded, or whatever it is, right? It can't be something where you put the spotlight on them, and we saw that a little bit last night. Whereas I was trying to force Havana to come up with something interesting, and she was getting flabbergasted and frustrated, right? We fought our way through it, but a different person would really push back against that, mm-hmm. right? So it needs to be in a low stakes, kind of safe, maybe even a little bit, I don't want to say whimsical, but kind of fun context, right? I don't want to say extraneous either, but it can't be essential. It can't be a high stakes kind of thing. That's one thing. The other thing too is the other two things I want to say about this is you need to find a role playing situation that interests them or interests their character, right? So if it's something like say they're playing some sort of gnome druid or something like that, put them in the position where it's easy to make them the winner, right? So, okay, well, the herbalist comes and approaches you and says, I'm wondering, can you give me any advice about how I might brew this sort of potion? Now, those kind of questions are very dangerous, right? How do I do something? And then the player might be like, I don't know. I tell them how it's done. I roll dice and show them or whatever. Now, keep in mind that level of abstract role playing is also okay, right? So that's the second thing I want to say about this is, one, find something that's an area of interest or maybe an area of expertise that the player themselves has knowledge on. So if they happen to know a lot about the structure of buildings, then create a situation where maybe they could apply that somehow within the context of the game. But secondly, like, give them a safe way to role play where they can either describe what their character is doing sort of in the third person, and this is often frowned upon, like at the table or whatever, right? Like, okay, so you come around and Dom will go like, okay, well, Tom, what does your character do? And I'll describe it in the third person. Well, I think, I think Regdar would probably be very intimidated in this situation, and so he would probably go over to maybe the back pew of the temple and just sort of examine some of the votive candles and some of the offerings that have been made there. And he's going to try not to engage with any of these priests who seem to be trying to convert him or whatever. Right? So having that, describing what the character does, not as an I or whatever, is often kind of like judged as like, well, they're not really role playing. That's sort of the into getting them to role play a little bit more. Oh, okay. Well, then one of the priests comes over and approaches Regdar and says, "Oh, hail, stout warrior! What quest brings you here?" Oh, okay. Well, then, and at some point, you're going to catch the players start to transition from he says into, well, then I say, and eventually they hopefully will drop the I say this, and then it's just you start having conversation back and forth. So it's a tough one. I would say, first of all, be understanding of what is their player type. There's certainly that player, and like my wife is that person who will sit back and kind of like be taking it in, and watching other people lead, and other people are doing their shtick and doing their funny, and then at some point she sees her moment of opportunity and goes, okay. Yeah. And she maybe has like a very intense role-playing moment, or she pulls this move that she describes in the third person, and we adjudicate that, and it's fun or whatever, and that's it. And she's gotten what she wants to get out of the scenario. So meet them on their terms. Don't necessarily feel like you have to grab them by the collar and pull them up to your terms, or even pull them up to the rest of the table. Other players can be kind of judgy about that too. Of like, well, I don't know, she doesn't really seem to say anything. It's like, yeah, that's maybe as much gaming as she wants to do. Mm-hmm. Are you gonna lay down again? I know, you're bored, aren't you? I bet there's a French fry, though, if you lay down. Lay down. Well, I'll lay down for French fries, I guess. Lay down.
You say French fries?
Hey.
I should be standing for French fry, right?
Oh, big yawns. Big angry yawns. Lay down. I hope that gives you enough... Hey. Lay down.
Or get some whiskey. Yeah, I think a lot of it is about not pressuring a player into doing anything. I think that's where a lot of the consternation comes from with GMs and players, in that you want to try and push the player to play in a style that you want them to play in, and you kind of have to have some give and take with that, not let that happen. Oh, did it?
I think there was a link in that big comment. The other thing that there's a big comment.
Oh, it's because there wasn't a space after a period, so it made it.
That was the thing. I think that the last thing that I will tell you is that you might encourage them to write some brief fiction about their character, right? Give us some backstory, or give me a formative moment in your character's career or whatever that really stands out, and that will help them think about their character and maybe give them a context or a lens through which they can see their character, right? So it's that sort of kind of like, and you know what? You can even reward them for that. It's like, okay, well, if you come up with this and there's something cool that comes up, maybe we can figure out a way to make it into your character. So if you come up with, you realize that you've had this formative experience and it was about you finding this burnt out wand, well, maybe now that burnt out wand becomes a element in the current campaign, right? So I would say that's another way to take somebody who's maybe, introverted or not enthusiastic about role playing, and giving them some agency over their character and a little bit of agency over the game, and let them kind of like find their way into it, rather than blam, put them on the podium and going, all right, dance monkey dance, let's do this thing.
Duke Dice, hello, welcome.
Welcome.
For Dusk City Outlaws, I have a problem with describing the different clues. Not that I don't know how to roleplay, but I don't know how to be helpful with the clues. Any tips to help someone that isn't good describing the more finite details?
I'm trying to think of an example of how that might have come up last night. I will say that I was not afraid to read stuff directly out of the book, right? There's not necessarily a need to do a lot of embellishment or a particularly deft turn or even some polishing on these things, right? I would say the biggest advantage that I had last night with distributing clues, okay, for example, the one that the clues about the canals were designed in a unique way. So my basic advice on this end of things, the easiest way to kind of describe this stuff is, what was helpful to me was, let me back up. My advice on this is to deliver the majority of your clues via NPCs, right? Via role-playing scenes. Now, if there are things that they find that are physical objects that their characters interact with, that's fine, or whatever. Then it's a matter of like thinking of what would be a cool way if I were to say, write a book, and I'm borrowing the main character from Eric over here. What would be a great way for his character to have a cool moment of finding this weird, corrupt book? Okay, well, it would be neat if I could add some sort of special effect around this thing. And when I walk in the room, it's cold. And then he breaks out in this sweat, but his sweat's green. And then as he reaches his hand out, he sees a little drop of green plops onto a floorboard. That's when he notices that there's a crack in the floorboard. And as you lift it back, there's this moss-covered book inside, this thick velvet covers and whatnot, right? So I think about, like, in a game like Dusk City Outlaws, you're allowed to do a little bit of borrowing agency from the players, or, people will call it railroading. I don't think it's necessarily railroading if you know that the outcome is safe and interesting, right? As opposed to, it's railroading if you know the outcome is dangerous and disastrous and you force it on them, right? But forcing them on an interesting outcome isn't necessarily so bad. So that's one thing, is if it's not somebody that they interact with, then I think to myself, well, what's a cool way that this could be revealed? And usually it's through some other element in the room, some other sense. Pick a sense that they can follow. You smell something vaguely, it almost smells like charcoal burning, and you follow this scent across the room, and it's strongest over in the corner, and when you pull parts of the plaster and lath back, you see that there's a gentle simmering of smoke, and there's something cooking inside the wall. It's smoking, but it's not hot. When you pick it up, you can see that it's a small bird made out of crystal, right? So that's something, that's a trick that you can use, is pick a sense and help lead them to that thing. The two other techniques that I would recommend is, number one, if you have an NPC, like I said, if they're discovering their clues through talking to somebody, there's no reason that guy can't say, okay, or that you can go, oh, well, when I was in college, I studied architecture, and they gave us this really garbage class about the design of the city. Did you know that the Four Bridges intersection, It's the only place in the city where there are 4 bridges at different elevations that all cross the same canal. You know what? You go to school, it's no good. It just fills your head with useless garbage like that, right? Having a character allows you to pull more of a finesse move to drop information about that, and you can use that character to cast judgment. Hang a lampshade on the weirdness of that clue. I don't even know why I know that. That's stupid. Why is that kind of crap filling my brain? Which, number 1 is a lampshade saying, oh, okay, well, this is a unique detail that I have to include. But number 2 is also something that everybody says all the time. It's eminently relatable. Why do I know who won the Super Bowl in 2013? Who cares, right? So that's that piece of it. I thought I had a third. Oh, so the third thing that I would say is, because Dusk City Outlaws is a game about competence, you can say, oh, you know what? You realize now, when you were going through your training in the cartel, when you're coming up through the family, that the Don had this strange interest in architecture, and he kept going on and on and on about the 4-crossing intersection that had these 4 different bridges on it. I don't know why he talked about it so much, but now looking back on it, it is weird that it's the only place in the city where 4 bridges cross the same canal right next to each other. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So you can recontextualize the clue as not being something that the characters discover, but it can be something that the characters remember that they already know. Oh, now that you look at it, you realize that this crest is that crest of House Oakmantle. They're a very old, very well-moneyed family, but they've been very reclusive in the last 20 years, almost going back to the time when the Blackroot tree was planted. Right? So it can be a realization. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a realization that just lives with the players. You can also say, because they're competent, they know somebody. You ask some questions around. I certainly deployed that last night, right? Oh, you go in the other room and you talk to your buddies, and they're like, oh yeah, those characters, there's a lot of money going around in those things, right? You don't necessarily have to specify who they are, but for those more finite clues, there's kind of 3 different ways to kind of get into it, right? 1, the players, there's something about it that the players, it's a realization that comes back to them. 2 is there's somebody who's an expert who talks about it. And 3, you just follow a sense, follow one of your senses into finding that clue. Are you bored again? Are you gonna lay down? Why don't you lay down?
Welcome Party RPG says, do you think there's a difference between running a relatively linear plotline and railroading? And if you do, or if so, what is railroading then?
Railroading is the process of assuming your character's actions and intent in order to screw them. That's railroading. Everything else is role-playing. I mean, there's probably a more nuanced
sure.
answer to that.
Yeah.
But there's so many times where, in order to keep the game moving, I will assume characters' actions and intent. I will maybe like perfunctorily pass it by them, saying, okay, well, just to be clear, so it seems like your intent is to go deploy these nanobots, yes? Okay. All right, so let's just assume that you guys are going to move as a party throughout the map and in an organized fashion go to each one of these stations individually and drop this sort of stuff off, right? Now, that doesn't get them into any trouble. I may describe a few interesting things that happen along the way, but I don't put them in jeopardy, right? Railroading is when you do that and you go, now you find yourself at the end of a dark hallway, the passageway suddenly closes and gas begins to seep into your pores. And they go, well, wait a minute, we would have never explored the complex in like da-da-da-da-da, right?
Yeah, I think railroading in an RPG sense has a negative connotation. I think
I think it's overused as a negative connotation.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I you know, my answer would have been, yeah, sure. A linear plot line is railroading, as is anything. Anytime you're following a certain line of directions and you're not deviating from that path, you are basically on a track, and you're moving forward. But I think that, as Tom said, that's fine as long as you're moving towards a positive. The minute you are taking that as in a way to harm the characters, that's when you're using that power, that linear power, to disadvantage people, and that's a railroading aspect. So.
Also, I will say that it's a play style type of thing, and I don't think that we should judge play style by the structure. I think we should judge play style by the outcome, by how successful it is. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, some people would be like, "Oh, well, it's an open world. It's a huge sandbox. You can go in any direction." And I, as a player, goes, then I don't want to go in any direction. Why do I want to go in? Why is one direction more interesting than the other? If they're all equally interesting, then if I pick one, I feel like I'm missing out on something. If I feel like I'm missing out on something, I'm gonna have a lot of trouble picking one. So now I'm sort of overwhelmed with, well, what's the plot thread that we're trying to follow here, and where's this supposed to go, right? Mm-hmm. Some people really get off on that. Conversely, if I design a straight A to B to C thing that does not have necessarily a lot of player choice, if the journey along the way is really entertaining and builds to an incredible payoff, and the players are having a great time, who cares that they couldn't go off on a side path? So I think the structure is not important; it's the outcome. And I think favoring an open place, I think that's something that is. It really comes out of the video game world, mm-hmm. of like, oh, well, video games are so, bucketed and choice limited, and you have to go down these particular branches, but that's it. You can't go off the beaten path. Right. And that's a bad thing. So we've developed this open world sandbox. I think that's a pejorative term that really has kind of infiltrated its way into RPGs, and I don't think it's useful. So I would say... So I would say you have to judge the outcome and not necessarily the structure that's being delivered, right?
Yeah, DJ Regular. Notice people say railroading when they mean that they're not being granted the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. But like you point out, some people want a defined direction to be pointed toward.
I will argue against my own point, which is, if it seems like the only reason I'm going to go do the next thing is because it's the only thing to do, then you've done a bad job of plotting your adventure, right? And I will freely admit, like, we're sort of in kind of like, we're approaching that dangerous territory with Iron Keep right now, where they're like, we want a blue key card. Why? Because we want to get the God's Fire. Why? Because it's our quest. Like, they're kind of at that point, mm-hmm. right? And we've talked about this in the past week or so on DisOrganized Play, of like, okay, well, let's then get them to that point and get into more of the complications of the story that are more interesting, because they feel like they don't really know what they're doing anymore, and the only thing that they can do is kind of hang on to the one quest that they've got.
Right. So there can be conflict, but it just can't be leading to unavoidable danger.
I'm not sure about Dojima Detective's question is, does that happen when you design a character with an arc and a goal in the world? I don't think most people do design a character with an arc or a goal in the world, other than acquire more XP, level up, and like I have to say, I'm very definitively against this is a personal playstyle thing. I'm against plotting your character out for the next 20 levels. Like, that just rankles me, right? Okay. But I don't ever sit down and go, well, one day my character is going to be the Grand Vizier to the King. Mm-hmm. I like my characters to develop organically, but that also means I don't necessarily give them a huge goal.
I
I don't think it's common for people to do that either. If you do that at your table, great, good for you. You've given your DM some levers that he can manipulate, some sticks and carrots that he can put out there for you.
I mean, I did that on Wild Cards. My character had one goal, and that was to kill this guy who destroyed the town that he was from, or not from, but was sent to protect, and failed at doing so. Deadlands is a different system than D&D. There's that sort of room for that sort of thing. You've got hindrances and edges and stuff that build your backstory, so there's room for that. But it can be done. You can have character arcs and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't, like Tom, I don't think a lot of people are planning that stuff. I think a lot of people, generally when I build D&D characters, it's what would be the most fun for me to play. And then as I go in, I start, now you've met this guy and he's actually a vampire spawn and he's thwarting you at every turn. Okay, well, I've made an enemy. And, my goal now is to get rid of this guy or whatever. It's to find this treasure or something. Like, as you go, you'll start building out those goals. I don't know a ton of people that do that, but I'd imagine that there will be beats in the story like that where you go from a simple goal that branches out to multiple possible outcomes. Sometimes you need the MacGuffin to unlock a new area. Burning Wheel does the character goals thing well without it being something that carries all along the campaign.
Yeah, to be fair, I haven't really played Burning Wheel. I don't think have I played. I've played Torchbearer once. I've never played Burning Wheel. Right.
Thanks for the bits, Duke Dice. And yes, hopefully you will be a great DM. Why not?
Why not? It's something even I aspire to.
Yeah. You're only a level 3 DM.
It's true. It's true. I think that as this stuff relates to like sandbox versus railroading or sandbox versus a linear plot, even if I do have a character goal or an arc, unless the DM has pre-baked it into the sandbox, that doesn't give me any more direction generally than the rest of everything.
Yeah, I mean that's something
I'm still standing at a crossroads where like, do we want to go explore the horrible depths of the jungle that promise danger and treasure, or do we want to go into the city that promises swindles and treasure?
Thank you for the sub, welcome party.
Hey, welcome.
Real quick, you as a sub and a new sub to the channel, you get a free reroll, which you can give to any of our players on any of our games every month.
You can give it to me on Wednesday too.
It's true, every month. And thank you to Human Detective for the 100 biddies. But every month, as long as you're a subscriber, you can give one reroll to a player of your choice or to a GM in many cases. So think about that and tune in for one of our actual plays. Tom runs Iron Keep Chronicles on Wednesday nights. I don't mean to skim over what you guys were talking about with character goals, but
to be fair, it's a huge discussion in terms of like what is role playing and what's bad about it and what's linear versus branching versus open sandbox design, etc. Like those issues are huge and amorphous, so we're not gonna be able to come to like a definitive.
I will say, like when I was talking about Savage Worlds, like that was something that Jordan, the GM of that game, and I discussed well ahead of time, and we were planning and pre-planning and everything like that. It came in and it became baked into the story. Like that was the impetus for what we were doing. If you're just like, I built this character to do this, and then you start playing the game and you don't talk to your GM about it, like it's not going to be necessarily come into be.
And I think that experience.
And thank you, Kitsy Puff.
That you had with Jordan is somewhat atypical in that.
Yeah.
Well, number one, Jordan's a really great DM and cares about integrating those story elements really tightly. And then number two is like we're doing a streaming game, right?
Yeah.
Where we're trying to tell an engaging narrative story as opposed to just casual hang out and play D&D.
Absolutely,
right? Yeah. And even if you have watched, if you watch me play a pre-published adventure, you'll see that I change it all the time to try and make the narrative more interesting. Partly because I find that engaging, but also partly because I want to deliver that experience to the audience. Whereas I don't think most DMs who are playing D&D put that level of effort into it, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. What I mean is They got a day job. They got a family that they got to attend to. They're lucky if they can get together once every 2 weeks to hang out and play with their friends, or their friends and family or whatever. And so they go and buy an adventure off the rack and they page through it. And you know, if the thief at the table, their main goal may be, well, during the course of this adventure, I want to steal as much stuff as possible, and that's as sophisticated as it gets, right? So, so your mileage may vary. You don't run what's fun for your players. If your players love having a sandbox and you love creating that giant, enormous world that, you know, they go off this way, but you have 1,700 pages devoted to whatever was happening over here, great. You know, play what works for you. The railroading issue really comes down to you inflicting a choice on the players that either makes them look dumb or, well, that's it. You know, it makes them look dumb. Players don't like doing things that make their characters look dumb unless they're very intentionally making a role-playing decision in that regard.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And even then, other guys at the table would be like, I know you have a 6 intelligence, but you have a 13 wisdom. Can you not throw the alchemist fire at the bear?
Right, yeah.
Or the sleeping bear or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you not bash the skull with the weird rubies in its eyes that's hanging from the knotted black rope attached to the iron ring on the ceiling? I know you have a 6 intelligence, but you also have a 14 wisdom.
Right. So yeah,
I feel like we've sort of reached the end of our questions here, and we've tackled everything cool. We went a little extra, which was good because we went a little extra talking about Dust City Outlaws. But we'll be happy to have one of these sessions again. It was just a nice opportunity because we had some things come up on Tuesday that I wasn't in the position to address. I wanted to talk about encounter design instead. It was nice to have a little little Q&A time today, and especially because we had to run our one shot last night instead of running our regular game. So that's the buzz from our end of things. What's coming up tonight, Mr. Dom Zook?
So tonight is the series finale of Never Tell Me the Odds, our Star Wars RPG. That's the Fantasy Flight Star Wars system.
America's DM,
America's
DJ
DM.
David Crennan.
David Crennan running the game. It's going to be a lot of fun. Kyle Capps, Heather Wood, Talene Guerra.
Kyle Capps is amazing, by the way.
Kyle Capps is awesome.
Yeah.
And Zeke Pinero are rounding out that. They are trying to save the universe, really, the galaxy at least. It's a very, very interesting game, and it is the series finale. It's the last one, so definitely come in and tune in and support these guys.
I want Kyle in one of my games.
Nope.
I was lucky enough to play with Kyle when I was playing Adventures League here in Los Angeles. And first of all, he's a fantastic role player, and then secondly, he's an amazing artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go and follow Kyle on Twitter, you'll see some pictures he's done of the players. He just did one recently of Talene and Zeke's characters. It's funny because Zeke described his character and Kyle went with it and drew a completely different character because they're all well-established aliens in the Star Wars universe. But he drew this. He looks like a Sheeran from Starfighter, but that's not what he looks like in Star Wars. But it's awesome. He's very cool. What is Kyle's Twitter? I
believe is it Kyle
Illustration?
Kyle Capps Illustration?
Yeah, something like that. I'm sorry, I don't have it offhand. Farquaad might have it. But anyway, so that's tonight. Tomorrow night we're back with Wild Cards. That's me, Jordan Pridgeon, Megan Caves, and Gaurav Galati with GM. What did we determine Jordan was? Glendale's GM?
Is he Glendale? Is he the San Fernando Valley's GM?
San Fernando Valley's GM, Jordan Caves Callerman. That is our Deadlands Reloaded game using the Savage Worlds. It's a Deadlands Reloaded setting using Savage Worlds system. That's a lot of fun. And then Sunday, we have a very special 2-week engagement with the Champions of the Earth podcast. We'll be here in studio running a...
Champions of the Earth. I just had this...
Yeah.
I blew my voice out Tuesday night in case you can't tell, so I wanted to use my you know, champions of the earth.
There you go. Well, hold on, because they're running not champions of the earth, but champions of the past.
Champions of the past.
Which is a prequel of sorts.
A prequel of sorts.
So, you're definitely going to want
A
to...
champion of the earth arrives never too early.
No.
Or never too late.
That's not the quote.
But a champion of the earth arrives exactly during a prequel.
It hurts my nerd brain. Anywho, yeah. So tune in for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. So that's going to be running for 2 weeks. And then
Is Tempting Fate on Sunday then, or
no? That's champions. That's champions of the past. And and then Monday we're back with Uncanny Valley, and then Tuesday we
Disorganized
have
Play.
Disorganized Play, and then the
Brian, you love it. Don't tell me. Brian, you love my wizard voice.
we have the final episode of our Starfinder game. And Wednesday we'll be back with Iron Keep.
Yes.
With Mr. Tom.
Right.
So that's sort of it right now.
That's the rundown of the calendar. You can go get yourself some wonderful Brian Patterson D20 Monkey merch at our store. He gets money, we get money. It's a win-win-win for everyone around. You can get this very shirt, the Dungeon Crawler Society, as well as many other shirts that I've worn on stream, which I enjoy myself. Favorite Enemy, the Patriarchy, Morden F. and Kynan. The new Mimic shirt should be coming soon.
No, what's the cat? What's the cat one? It's like Color Spray Cat or something like. No, Prismatic Cats.
Prismatic Cats.
Prismatic
Cats.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, all that.
Oh, DJ Regular wants to know what's coming up. We're having a subathon on March 17th. That's 2 weeks away.
Yes.
Oh
so
is it 1 week away?
It's not this Saturday. A week from this Saturday.
It's 10 days from now, less than.
St. Patrick's Day. We're going to be doing a subathon. So if you've been waiting to sub to the channel,
what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? Just sub. Just do it.
Look, Twitch Prime is free. If you have Amazon Prime, just be a friend of the show.
It's true. It's true. Super easy. However, if you sub up during the subathon, you will be entered to win prizes, and also you will help the games out by unlocking tiers and stuff. It's just via subs. We're not doing tips or anything like that. You can tip, of course. We're always happy to have tips, but this is all about the subs. Yep. So even if you have subbed, you can also gift a sub, and if you gift a sub, you will be entered, and the person you gift the sub to will also be entered, and also will be unlocking things and stuff like that. So it's a very nice. I think
DJ Regular's question is, what shows are in the upcoming marathon? We explained the benefits to us. What is the benefits to people on the internet?
That's the basics of a subathon. So we are running all of our normal shows. I don't think he was
asking what a subathon is.
No. What's up on the upcoming marathon? Like, what's up? What's up with it?
No, I read that as what is up on the docket? What is up on the lineup?
I don't know. We're going to be running all of our regular games, plus introducing a brand new regular game. So Tempting Fate, Iron Keep Chronicles, and Wildcards will all be having special episodes. I know Tempting Fate has a couple of guests. Wildcards will be doing Deadlands Noir, so a little bit more future in the Deadlands universe. Iron Keep.
More future. More future.
Apparently that's more future.
We're now more future.
And then a brand new game.
Champions of the future.
Nope.
A dead land never arrives too early or too late. A dead land dies exactly when it lands.
A brand new game called Legacy by it's Stephen Pope's new game. Uncanny Valley will be coming to a close shortly at the end of this month, and then he'll be moving on to Legacy, which is a City of Mist game. And we'll have our very first preview with the cast and everything on that subathon, so definitely tune in for that. That's basically it, and we'll have cast interviews, special guests, giveaways, Lots of fun stuff. And then at the end, a very special whatever Dom thinks of at the very end.
At the very end, whatever Dom thinks of. Yeah. I'm going to try to have a really kind of hit the pavement hard kind of episode of Iron Keep Chronicles. It depends upon where the story gets, but I think gets to you. But I think I'm going to try to have some very pivotal things come to a head during our subathon episode. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Even though I just remembered that it's 10 days away from now.
Yes. So start thinking about it.
And Luigi will be in the studio unless that's not going to fly.
I mean, he can.
I'll have Luigi. He may end up at the dog sitter, but yeah. So there you go. That's the buzz. Obviously, we've gone on too long because I've gotten punchy. Also, my dog has French fry madness, so that's my own fault more than anything else. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us, everyone who gave us a little cheer with some bits. Thanks to Blind Seer for the $5 donation. Thanks to BSB Care and Fockwad and all of our mods for keeping the channel safe, friendly, clean, and accessible.
DJ Regular, thank you.
All of our new people, DJ Regular as well. Thanks to all of our mods and regulars who help keep us afloat. Thanks to the new people who came in and joined us. It's great to see you. Our channel, it really is about trying to have a personal and relatable experience. And also, one of our founding, core missions is to help teach you how to play RPGs and enjoy your game. So we're glad to sit here and have some actual interaction with you, the fans. And we consider ourselves part of the community, and you're obviously part of the community, so let's all make the community better together, as opposed to, I don't pretend to have all of the answers or the definitive answers. I just have my experience and my opinion, and I want to share it with you, and I want you to share your experience and your opinions with us likewise. So, that being said, thanks so much for joining us, and until next time, let's dungeon!
Tom, you can't even...
Dom never clicks the button too early or too late. Dom clicks the stream to death exactly when he means to.
Yeah, that was almost pretty close.